What if I told you that the French Revolution wasn't just fueled by hunger, but by history's first viral virtue shaming campaign? We all know the textbook story. The peasants were starving. The queen was buying diamonds. She said, let them eat cake, which she didn't. By the way, so the guillotine came out. Simple, right? The rich versus the poor. The 99% versus the 1%. Wrong? It's never that simple. What if I told you that the mob didn't just want to kill Marie Antoinette because she was rich? They wanted to destroy her because the tabloids, the 18th century fake news machine, convinced them she was a queen of depravity, a moral monster. And their proof, it wasn't a sex tape, it was her intense ride or die loyalty to her best friend, the Princesse de Lamballe. The revolutionaries turned a quiet, pious, boring friendship into a scandalous conspiracy theory so violent that it didn't end with a protest or a nasty tweet. It ended with a grisly trophy, a makeup kit, and a gruesome parade designed specifically to break a queen's mind. Forget the pastel macarons, forget the indie rock soundtrack. We are diving deep into the 18th century gutter, where cancel culture meant literal, brutal end. So, buckle up, because we aren't just talking about history today. We are talking about the moment the world learned that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun, it's a rumor. Let's set the scene. Welcome to Versailles in the 1770s. If you think your high school was toxic, you haven't seen the French court. Imagine a place where 10,000 aristocrats are crammed together, smelling like unwashed bodies and expensive perfume, with absolutely nothing to do but gossip. It was a golden cage. And right in the middle of this shark tank is Marie Antoinette. She's a teenager. She's Austrian, which, to the French, was basically the same as being an alien. And she is married to Louis XVI, a guy who had all the charisma of a damp towel. Louis was a nice guy, sure, but he preferred fixing locks and hunting deer to running a country or, talking to his wife. Marie was bored out of her mind. She was isolated. She was being bullied by the older court ladies who hated her accent and her vibe. So, she did what any lonely teenage girl would do. She tried to find a squad. She needed an escape. She needed a safe space. Enter Marie-Thérèse Louise of Savoy, Princesse de Lamballe. Now, if Marie Antoinette was the it girl, flashy, loud, trend-setting, Lamballe was the opposite. She was the mom friend. She was pious. She was anxious, and she was incredibly sensitive. History tells us she was prone to fainting spells if she saw something too vulgar. She wasn't a party animal. She was a boring, loyal, sweet-natured rich girl in a court full of backstabbers and social climbers. Lamballe was an anomaly. She didn't want power. She just adored Marie. Marie Antoinette made Lamballe the superintendent of the queen's household. Essentially, she made her the gatekeeper. If you wanted to see the queen, you had to go through the princess. Big mistake, huge. By elevating her bestie, Marie Antoinette alienated the old guard of Versailles. The dukes and duchesses were furious. Who is this boring Savoyard girl blocking my access to the queen? The jealousy began to fester. And when aristocrats get jealous, they don't just talk behind your back. They commission filth. We tend to think of fake news as a Mark Zuckerberg invention. But let me tell you, 18th century Paris had Twitter beat by a mile. They had the Libelles. These were underground pamphlets, basically filthy, unauthorized tabloids that circulated in the gutters of Paris, and their favorite target was the queen. Why? Because attacking the king was dangerous. But the queen, she was a woman. She was a foreigner. She was low-hanging fruit. The Libelles couldn't just say, she spends too much money. That's boring. Politics doesn't sell papers. Sex sells papers. So, they took the queen's friendship with Lamballe and twisted it. They spun a narrative that these two women weren't just friends, they were engaged in unnatural acts. They painted Versailles as a den of unnatural vice, a den of debauchery where the queen and her favorites were laughing at the starving peasants while indulging in every vice imaginable. Was any of this true? No. Lamballe was so prudish she probably fainted if someone said ankle, but did the public believe it? Absolutely. Because here's the thing about human psychology, we love to hate successful women, and we specifically love to believe that powerful women are sexually deviant. It makes it easier to dehumanize them. By 1789, the starving citizens of Paris didn't just see a spendthrift queen. They saw a monster. A toxic seductress who was draining the nation's budget to buy gifts for her girlfriends? The hate wasn't political anymore. It was personal. It was visceral. Fast forward to 1789. The powder keg explodes. The Bastille falls. The women of Paris march on Versailles and drag the royal family back to the Tuileries Palace in Paris. They are effectively prisoners. Most of the queen's fair weather friends, the party girls. The sycophants saw the writing on the wall. They packed their Louis Vuitton trunks and fled to Austria, Switzerland, or England. And Lamballe, she got out too. By 1791, the Princesse de Lamballe was safe. She was in England. She was rich. She was secure. She could have spent the rest of her life sipping tea in a London drawing room, writing memoirs about the good old days, and growing old in comfort. She had won the survival lottery, but then she gets a letter. It's from Marie Antoinette. The queen is desperate. She's alone. She's surrounded by guards who spit when she walks by. She writes to Lamballe, I need you. Don't abandon me. My heart is breaking. Now. I want you to pause and ask yourself, truly, you have a best friend. You love them. But if they were trapped in a burning building that was also filled with thousands of people trying to murder you, would you go back inside? Most of us would send thoughts and prayers. Lamballe. She booked a ticket to hell, against the advice of every single person in her life. She returned to Paris. She walked right back into the lion's den because her friend was sad. That is ride or die energy on a level that, frankly, scares me. When she arrived at the Tuileries, the queen fell into her arms weeping. It was a beautiful reunion, but outside the palace walls, the mob saw something else. They saw the German traitor and her favorite back together. The Libelles went wild. The gang is back together. The conspiracy continues. Yana Lamballe's return wasn't seen as an act of loyalty. It was seen as an act of war. It is August 1792. The monarchy is officially abolished. The king and queen are thrown into the temple prison. Lamballe goes with them, sleeping on the floor at the queen's feet. But the revolutionaries know that to break the queen, they have to isolate her. So, one night, guards burst in. They tear Lamballe away from Marie Antoinette. They drag the princess to La Force prison. Now, we enter the darkest chapter of the French Revolution, the September massacres. Paranoia has gripped Paris. The Prussian army is invading, and rumors spread that the prisoners in Paris are planning a jailbreak to help the enemy. The solution? Kill the prisoners. All of them. Mobs of sans-culottes, working-class radicals, drunk on cheap wine and bloodlust storm the prisons. They set up kangaroo courts. Trials that lasted 2 minutes. On September 3rd, they drag the Princesse de Lamballe out of her cell. She is disoriented. She's terrified. She's pushed before a judge sitting on a crate. The judge looks at her and gives her a choice, a simple way out. Swear an oath to liberty and equality, and swear hatred to the king and the queen. That's it. Just say the words. Just denounce the woman who ruined your life. Just say, I hate her, and you can walk out the door. The room goes deathly silent. Lamballe looks at the grim weapons surrounding her. She looks at the mob, and she realizes she is standing in the center of a human meat grinder. She whispers, I cannot. It is not in my heart. Boom. The judge shrugs. Take her away. She is pushed out the door into the alleyway, and the mob descends. Now, I'm going to spare you the worst of the medical details because I want this video to stay monetized, but let's just say it was medieval. It wasn't quick. It was frenzied. They didn't just want to kill her. They wanted to erase her humanity, but killing her wasn't enough. They needed to send a message. They cut off her head, and this is where the story shifts from tragedy to psychological horror. Someone in the mob has an idea, a sick, twisted idea. Let's make sure her girlfriend sees this. They take their grisly trophy to a hairdresser. Yes, you heard me, a hairdresser. They coerce a terrified barber to wash the blood out of Lamballe's famous blonde curls. They make him powder her face. They rouge her cheeks. They style the hair perfectly. Why? Because they wanted her to look presentable for her morning visit to the queen. They mount the head on a long pike, and the procession begins. Thousands of people, singing, dancing, carrying a made-up head on a stick, march toward the temple prison where Marie Antoinette is being held. They gather under her window. They start chanting, Antoinette, come look. Your friend is here to see you. Come give her a kiss. Inside the tower, Marie Antoinette hears the noise. She moves toward the window. Luckily, or perhaps unluckily, her guards realize what is happening. Even the hardened jailers are sickened. One of them tackles the queen to stop her from looking. Another curtains the window, but she hears them. She hears the descriptions. She knows. Marie Antoinette fainted. She collapsed to the floor in a dead swoon. And historians generally agree that this was the moment that the Marie Antoinette of old died. The frivolous, laughing woman was gone. What rose from the floor was a ghost. They didn't need to execute her yet. They had already shattered her spirit by savagely tearing away the only person who truly loved her. So, that's the horror story. But now, I want to pivot because history loves a punchline. We just spent 15 minutes talking about how Marie Antoinette was the villain of the French economy, how her spending on dresses and diamonds and parties ruined the nation. That's why she had to die, right? But let's look at France today. Open your eyes. What is the engine of the modern French economy? Is it wheat? Is it manufacturing guillotines? No. It's luxury, it's fashion, it's tourism. France is the #1 tourist destination in the world. And why do people go there to see Versailles, to see the glamour, to buy a Louis Vuitton bag or a Dior dress? And who invented that brand? Who was the patient zero of French high fashion? Marie Antoinette. Before her, Paris wasn't the center of the fashion world. She made it that. She worked with her designer, Rose Bertin, the first celebrity fashion designer, to turn French style into a global export. She understood the power of branding 200 years before the Kardashians. The irony is staggering. The very thing she was killed for, the luxury, the excess, the obsession with aesthetics, are the exact things that keep the French Republic solvent today. The French revolutionaries won the political war. They got their republic. But Marie Antoinette won the culture war. Every time a tourist buys a ticket to Versailles to gawk at her bedroom. Every time LVMH reports a $1 billion profit. The ghost of Marie Antoinette is laughing. She was the ultimate influencer. She paid for it with her head, but she built a soft power empire that outlasted every single one of the men who condemned her. She is the reason made in France means expensive and classy. So, in a weird, twisted way, she saved the economy, just not in time to save herself. Now, why does this matter to you? Why should you care about a dead princess and her nightmare on a pike? Because the playbook hasn't changed. Marie Antoinette and the Princesse de Lamballe were the first victims of a machine we know all too well. When a society gets angry, when the economy tanks, when people are scared, we don't look for complex solutions. We look for a witch, and usually that witch is a woman, preferably a foreigner, preferably someone who looks like they're having too much fun. The way the French media treated Marie Antoinette is exactly how modern tabloids treat female celebrities. Build them up, obsess over their clothes, and then, the moment they stumble, tear them to shreds. Look at how they weaponized her friendship. They took female solidarity, a bond of love and support, and turned it into something dirty. She's not loyal, she's perverted. She's not a good friend, she's a conspirator. Does that sound familiar? We see it every day. We see the internet decide that this person is the villain of the week. We see context stripped away. We see mob mentality take over. The sans-culottes didn't have Twitter, but they had Pikes. The impulse is the same, dehumanized to justify the violence. Marie Antoinette was a flawed human being. Sure, she was out of touch. She was entitled. But was she a monster deserving of having her best friend's head waved in her face? No. She was a convenient distraction. While the politicians argued and the economy collapsed, it was easier to scream at the woman in the pretty dress than to fix the price of bread. So, let's go back to that moment in London. The Princesse de Lamballe holding that letter, she had a choice: comfort, safety, and a long life, or a horrific death for the sake of holding her friend's hand one last time. She chose the hand. It's easy to look at history and see names and dates, but when you look at the Princesse de Lamballe, you see something terrifyingly human. You see the raw cost of loyalty. We post about being ride or die. We use the hashtag, but Lamballe puts us all to shame. She rode, and she definitely died. And it leaves us with a haunting question. A question I want you to answer in the comments below. In a world that punishes loyalty and rewards self-preservation, was she brave, or was she a fool if you were safe in London? And your best friend texted you from the middle of a war zone saying, "I need you." Would you get on that boat? Be honest. History is written by the victors, but the tuition is paid by the victims. And sometimes, the only thing you leave behind is a cautionary tale about why you should never, ever go back to Paris when the mob is angry. Thanks for watching. Don't lose your head in the comments section.